Hey, what's going on, everybody? Hope you guys are doing great. Happy Saturday. We got a lot of matchups to cover on this college football slate. Should be a pretty exciting day here. So go ahead and like and subscribe. Check out all my links in the description below. And go ahead and sign up with ParlayPlay, guys. Get $10 in risk-free entries. When you guys do sign up, you can use it for some of these NFL contests. College football contests. And I do have an exclusive subscriber-only tournament for free. Go ahead and hop in there. Top three do get paid, so I got nothing to lose. Pretty fun. So go ahead and check those out, guys, along with the other free tournaments they have as well for college football. So yeah, we'll hop into it here. A lot of good matchups, starting with Houston versus Temple. Houston opening up as 24.5 point favorites with the over-under at 53. The last 10 head-to-head, these teams have played 5 times. Houston 4-1, 3-2 covering in those games. Houston coming off a 54-42 win over USF. Currently on an 8-game winning streak, playing really good football here. Temple, they've been pretty bad. On a 4-game losing streak, coming off a 45-3 loss against East Carolina. 3 out of their last 2 games, they've only scored 3 points, 7 points, 14, then 3 points. Yeah, this losing streak is rough. This Temple team's playing very bad football. Houston should be able to run it up on this Temple team. We'll take Houston minus 24.5, and there'll be a nice money line addition as well to your parlays. Next matchup, we have Michigan versus Penn State. Michigan opening up as 1.5 point favorites with the over-under at 48.5. The last 10 head-to-head, Penn State 6-4, 5-5 covering in those 10. Michigan coming off a 29-7 win over Indiana. Penn State coming off a 31-14 win over Maryland. Michigan 13-7 in their last 20 against Penn State. 5-2 covering against Penn State. Penn State playing good at home, 6-1 at home here, but just 1-3 in their last 4. Michigan's only loss was against Michigan State in a tough matchup there. I just don't trust this Penn State offense. They've been very shaky at times. Defense is pretty solid, but Michigan's a well-rounded bunch here. On a 1.5 point spread, we're just going to take Michigan on the money line. Trust Michigan more in this matchup. Next matchup, we have Mississippi State versus Auburn. Auburn opening up as 5.5 point favorites with the over-under at 51. The last 10 head-to-head, Auburn 6-4, 5-5 covering in those 10. Mississippi State coming off a 31-28 loss against Arkansas. Auburn coming off a 20-3 loss against A&M. Very bad outing for Auburn. Mississippi State, they struggled against Auburn here. Just 1-4 in their last 5. 1-4 covering against Auburn in that 5-game stretch. And they're also 1-5 on the road against Auburn. Auburn playing good at home. 15-3 at home here. 5-1 at home against Mississippi State. I think it's a good bounce back for Auburn. Coming off a 3-point game against A&M, I think they'll be able to they should be able to get a lot more offense against this Mississippi State team. I like Auburn minus 5.5, and I like them on the money line. Next matchup, we have New Mexico State versus Alabama. Bama opening up as 51.5 point favorites with the over-under at 67. These teams did play one time. Bama winning 62-10. New Mexico State, very bad. Coming off a 35-13 loss against Utah State on a 5-game losing streak. Bama coming off a 20-14 win over LSU. Bama hasn't been the best big covering team so far this season. This New Mexico State team is very bad here, but 51.5 points. Gonna roll with New Mexico State plus the points. It's not going to be pretty. You're hoping they can at least put 10 points on the board. And Bama's defense hasn't been that elite. They've been allowing teams to score on them. I'm not expecting much offense from this New Mexico State team, but Gonna take the points with New Mexico State. Maybe buy a few points if you want to. Maybe 52 and a half. But we'll take the points with New Mexico State. That's just a lot of points. And yeah, we'll take the points with the Aggies. Next matchup, we have Northwestern versus Wisconsin. Wisconsin opening up as 24.5 point favorites with the over-under at 41. The last 10 head-to-head. Both teams are 5-5. Northwestern is 7-3 covering in those 10. Northwestern coming off a 17-12 loss against Iowa. Wisconsin coming off a 52-3 win over Rutgers. On a 5-game winning streak. Wisconsin playing good football here. Northwestern though 6-1 covering against Wisconsin. 6-1 at home against Northwestern. 4-1 covering in their last 5. Yeah, I like Northwestern plus the points. Not super in love with it, but Wisconsin hasn't been 20 plus point favorites at all this season. And so, coming off a nice Rutgers win, a good Iowa win, Purdue win. I mean, they've definitely been looking really good on this win streak here. But at 25.5 points is a lot, which they have never been favored by that much this season so far. I think Northwestern can kind of hang it around, make it interesting maybe. But we'll buy a point, get them at plus 25, and I think that's probably a better play with Northwestern. All right, next matchup, we have a pretty big matchup. We got Oklahoma versus Baylor. Oklahoma opening up as 5.5 point favorites with the over-under at 62.5. The last 10 head-to-head. Oklahoma 8-2, but Baylor's 7-3 covering in those 10 matchups. Oklahoma, currently undefeated, coming off a 52-21 win over Texas Tech. Baylor, coming off that 30-28 loss against TCU. That was kind of a very disappointing loss for Baylor here. Oklahoma 7-0 against Baylor, 18-2 on the 11-2 on the road against Baylor as well. Baylor 2-11 at home against Oklahoma. I think it's going to be a battle here, but I do like Oklahoma to keep the streak alive. That TCU loss really hurt Baylor. I like Oklahoma to go to 10-0 here. Should be a fun matchup, definitely high scoring, but I think Oklahoma could definitely win by a touchdown here. So we'll take Oklahoma minus 5.5, and on a money line too, pretty cheap, relatively cheaper money line for a big powerhouse team. Next matchup, we have Georgia State versus Coastal Carolina. Coastal opening up as 10.5 point favorites with the over-under at 52. The last 10 head-to-head, these teams have played 4 times. Both teams are 2-2, and they're 2-2 covering the spread. So a pretty split down the middle there. Georgia State coming off a 21-17 loss against Louisiana Lafayette. Coastal coming off a 28-8 win over Georgia Southern. And then, the big news for this game is Coastal. McCall, their, great quarterback, is out for the season. We're going to see how well the backup does play. But luckily, Georgia State, nothing to really be too concerned with. Coastal still the better team here. Georgia State playing good on the road, though. 7-1 covering on the road. Coastal 12-0 at home, 18-2 in their last 20. I still like Coastal to get it done here, even with their backup. I just think they have a better defense, better supporting cast to help the backup. Got a nice win here. Only 10.5 points. I think they could definitely win by 2 scores. So, we'll take Coastal minus 10.5. And, we'll roll with Coastal here. Next matchup, we have Georgia versus Tennessee. Georgia opening up as 20-point favorites with the over-under at 56. The last 10 head-to-head, Georgia 8-2, 5-5 covering in those 10. Georgia, undefeated, coming off a 43-6 win over Missouri. Tennessee coming off a 45-42 win over Kentucky. Solid win for Tennessee. Georgia 5-0 on the road right now. 9-2 in their last 11 against Tennessee. It's just, how can you take any team against Georgia? I mean, this team is unbelievable. Teams really can't score on them. I mean, look at the scoring output here in their last matchups. Missouri put up 6, Florida put up 7, Kentucky 13, Auburn 10, Arkansas 0, Vandy 0, South Carolina 13. No team has scored more than 13 on them this season. Crazy. Georgia, that D's elite offense can put up points. Yeah, we'll take Georgia minus 20 here. Next matchup, we have Louisiana Lafayette versus Troy. Lafayette opening up as 6.5 point favorites with the over-under at 48. The last 10 head-to-head. Both teams are 5-5, so pretty split down the middle there. Lafayette coming off a 21-17 win over Georgia State. Troy coming off a 31-24 win over South Alabama. Lafayette on an 8-game winning streak, 5-2 in their last 7 against Troy. Yeah, I like Lafayette here. Better offense and defense here. Only a 6.5 point spread. I think that's the perfect number. Yeah, we'll take the Raging Cajuns here. Next matchup, we have Minnesota versus Iowa. Iowa opening up as 4.5 point favorites with the over-under at 37. The last 10 head-to-head, Iowa 8-2, 7-3 covering in those 10. Minnesota coming off a 14-6 loss against Illinois, and then Iowa coming off a 17-12 win over Northwestern. Minnesota 0-6 against Iowa, 0-5 covering against Iowa. Yeah, really no success against Iowa here. Iowa 9-0 at home against Minnesota, 7-1 in their last 8. Yeah, I like Iowa here. You know, they've really let me down a lot. Those both losses killed both of my teasers last week, which was unfortunate. But yeah, I like Iowa against this Minnesota team. Off a bad loss against Illinois, they just had no offense. Going to be tough for them to get offense here against Iowa. So yeah, we're going to roll with Iowa in this matchup. All right, next matchup, we have Purdue versus Ohio State. Ohio State opening up as 21-point favorites with the over-under at 63.5. The last 10 head-to-head, Ohio State 6-4. Purdue 7-3 covering in those 10. Purdue coming off a 40-29 win over, undefeated Michigan State. Ohio State coming off a 26-17 win over Nebraska. Purdue, they've struggled against Ohio State, 0-7 on the road against Ohio State, but they've been able to cover 8-3 covering in their last 11 against Ohio State. What Purdue's been doing to ranked teams is unbelievable. I mean, took out Iowa when they were undefeated, took out Michigan State when they were undefeated, had that, bad loss to Wisconsin, but man, Purdue, when they play the ranked opponents, they really do bring it out. And Ohio State's playing really great here, but I like Purdue plus the points. I just think this is an upset potential here. What they did to Michigan State and Iowa, I don't think anyone saw that coming. They really do play well against ranked teams, which is crazy. Going to buy a 0.5 point, get them at plus 21.5, just to have them to where they're 4 scores. That's ideally what you want. Yeah, we'll take Purdue plus 21.5. The way they've been playing here, should be a heck of a game. And yeah, we'll see if they can cover. Going to roll with Purdue plus the points. Next matchup, we have Southern Miss versus UTSA. Texas San Antonio opening up as 33-point favorites with the over-under at 54.5. These teams have played 7 times. Southern Miss 4-3, 5-2 covering in those 7. This Southern Miss team is very bad. Currently on a 7-game losing streak, coming off a 38-14 loss against North Texas. And then UTSA coming off a 44-23 win over UTEP. Undefeated. No one's talking about the Roadrunners here. 9-0. Playing really great football. Southern Miss 0-6 on the road right now. Not looking good. UTSA 10-1 covering in their last 11. Riding this 9-game winning streak. 33 seems like a crazy number, but this Southern Miss team they really can't score. Had trouble scoring all season. I mean, they've only really last few games, 14 points, 10, 0, 13, 19, 14, 9. They've only gotten over 20 points one time, and that was their opener against Grambling, where they had 37. Every other game since then, they have not reached 20 points. Yeah, we'll take the Roadrunners minus 33. They'll be a nice money line addition to your big parlays for sure. Next matchup, we have Maryland versus Michigan State. Michigan State opening up as 12-point favorites with the over-under at 61.5. These teams have played 6 times. Michigan State 5-1, and then both teams are 3-3 covering in those matchups. Maryland coming off a 31-14 loss against Penn State. Michigan State coming off, that devastating 40-29 loss against Purdue. Maryland 1-5 in their last 6 against Michigan State. 0-5 covering in their last 5, so they haven't been able to cover at all. I think it's a great bounce back for Michigan State here. Coming off that loss to Purdue, I think they bounce back in a big way, beat up on this Maryland team. We'll take Michigan State minus 12 and a nice money line addition as well. Next matchup, we have Texas A&M versus Ole Miss. A&M opening up as 2.5-point favorites with the over-under at 57. The last 10 head-to-head, A&M 5-3. Ole Miss covering those 5-3 in their last 10 covering. A&M on a 4-game winning streak, coming off that 20-3 win over Auburn. Ole Miss coming off a 27-14 win over Liberty. A&M 15-2 in their last 17. They're 5-0 covering on the road right now. Ole Miss 7-0 at home. Should be a shootout, honestly. I think I'm going to buy the point with Ole Miss here. I think they're going to keep it close as long as Matt Corral's playing and that offense they have. They're going to put up a lot of points. And, going to get Mississippi or Ole Miss at plus 3.5. That's probably a better play in a tight spread here. So, we'll take Ole Miss plus the points. Next matchup, we have NC State versus Wake Forest. Wake Forest opening up as 2-point favorites with the over-under at 66. The last 10 head-to-head, both teams split down the middle, 5-5. NC State coming off a 28-14 win over FSU. Wake Forest coming off that devastating loss against North Carolina, 58-55. NC State 6-1 in their last 7, but they have struggled against Wake Forest. Just 1-10 covering against Wake Forest here. Wake 8-0 at home, 10-1 covering at home against NC State. I like Wake minus 2 here. I think it's a good spot for them coming off that loss to UNC. Going to be a tough battle here, but I'm going to go with Wake Forest. I just like the way they've been playing this season. They've been awesome. Going to roll with the Demon Deacons. Next matchup, we have Notre Dame versus Virginia. Notre Dame opening up as 6-point favorites with the over-under at 64. These teams have played twice. Notre Dame 2-0, 1-1 covering in those 2 matchups. Notre Dame coming off a 34-6 win over Navy, currently on a 4-game winning streak. Virginia coming off that 66-49 loss against BYU. Notre Dame 7-0 on the road, 17-1 against the ACC here. I think it's a good spot for Notre Dame. Only a 6-point spread. All these wins matter now to get into the playoffs. They definitely need a nice win over Virginia here. We'll take Notre Dame minus 6 and a nice money line play as well. Next matchup, we have TCU versus Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State opening up as 12-point favorites with the over-under at 54.5. These teams have played 9 times. Oklahoma State 5-4, 5-4 covering in those 9 matchups. TCU coming off a 30-28 win over Baylor, big win for TCU. Oklahoma State coming off a 24-3 win over West Virginia. TCU, except for that, besides that Baylor win, which is a nice win, they were just on a 3-game losing streak there. Haven't been playing that great. On the other hand, Oklahoma State been playing really good here. Don't know if I can trust this TCU team, even though they did knock off Baylor. I just like this Oklahoma State. I mean, back-to-back weeks they've held their opponents to just 3 points. This Oklahoma State defense is really nice. And yeah, we'll take Oklahoma State -12 and a nice money line option as well. Then the last matchup, we have Washington State versus Oregon. Oregon opening up as 14-point favorites with the over-under at 57.5. The last 10 head-to-head, Oregon 6-4, but then Washington State's 9-1 covering the spread in those 10 games. Washington State coming off a 34-21 win over Arizona State. Oregon coming off a 26-16 win over Washington. Washington State 10-1 covering against Oregon here, but just 4-10 against Oregon. I still like Oregon -14. I'm going to buy a half a point and get them at -13.5 just to be safe. But yeah, Oregon needs a nice statement win here against this Cougars team. Yeah, I'm going to roll with the Ducks. And that's going to be it for the video. Good luck with your picks and parlays on Saturday, and I'll see you guys Sunday. Have a good one.